Greetings and welcome to Zord's Planetary Space Program, episode 28, where we're going to go get Dean Kerman. He is sitting in low Eve orbit, where he arrived from Eve's surface, and we're going to go pick him up. To do this, we are first going to change our orbit so that it doesn't have the same period as his orbit, and then we're just gonna use Kerbal Alarm Clock to sit and wait for our orbits to match up so that we have a rendezvous or approximate rendezvous that we can adjust, and eventually we're here. So since Dean's spacecraft doesn't have any fuel or docking ports, there's no real point to get any closer than this. So we're just gonna have Dean spacewalk over to the other guys. No doubt he's eager to meet them and to use the superior facilities of the larger three-man pod. Now we are going to go to the station, and the station is also out of sync, so we do the same thing. We put ourselves on an orbit that intersects the target orbit, and then we use Kerbal Alarm Clock to sit and wait, and that's it. We're also going to put the interplanetary pusher to our station, because it has quite a lot of fuel that we don't want to not have access to. It might as well sit at the station, right? So the first ship to arrive is the pusher, which doesn't really have a problem making this encounter. But most of the docking happened in the dark, so I just skip forward to the point where it gets interesting, which is me bumping into the station. Let's take a look at the station in sunlight. It's looking quite good, and our fuel levels are also good. We have lots of fuel, more than we are likely to need. So now we just wait around for the next ship to arrive, which is this one, and it arrives right now. So we do the usual thing. First we do some tumbling around to find the retrograde vector, then we point and burn, and we have ourselves a rendezvous. Now the part where we actually get close to the station and all of those parts is rather boring, so we cut it away until we are really close. And now we need to dock this thing backwards. You can't change that, but I'm quite used to this. So we just dock this backwards on where we took it, and we need to be extra super careful not to bump these nuclear engines just sitting out there. So we just need to, yes, that's it, looking good. Now we need to refuel the RCS tanks of the capsule, because we're gonna take one of these engines sitting on the station. No one's using it, so we can just take it. We're gonna dock this to the front of the small tanker sitting right over here, and because there's a docking port and you see the landing legs, it's actually the back of this new craft, which now has a probe core thanks to the modular engine. This craft is going to go pick up the command pod, or the command module, because it's a ship, not just a pod. So with that's why we needed to refuel the RCS system, because this ship runs only on RCS, and we are going to go dock to the rest of the spacecraft sitting over there. This is really the crowning achievement of the modular systems. You can just build ships out of parts you have lying around and make something that works out of it. Now, admittedly, the center part here is custom designed for this mission, but I only needed very few parts to make a complete ship, because the rest is just plug and play. So, of course, this mission is going to Gilly. There's not really any place else where you can send a ship this small and expect a successful landing and return mission. Here we go, look at it. It's a complete ship made from parts we found lying around. Well, lying around in space, not by the road, as everything is, almost. So, we're going to Gilly. This is quite a lot of maneuver noting, so I just skip this. We have ourselves a ejection burn, or a transfer burn, or whatever you want to call it. We're gonna use this to get out to Gilly and follow it up with a correction burn. It's kind of like going to Minmus, except a lot harder. So I tried to use some of the RCS fuel on the way out, because as I said before, it's a lower specific impulse fuel, so you should use it first to maximize the delta V of your craft. But I also am not going to use any of the actual rocket fuel for the actual landing or lots of the orbital operations around Gilly. So you want to keep some of the RCS. So we have done our ejection, our correction, and now we're doing our plane change so that we actually get the encounter, which we have. So we just put in an alarm, and is this thing still called Dress Lander? It's the Gilly Lander now. So we changed the name, and there's Gilly. Now we're going to want to circularize our orbit. And we put down the node, and now we wait for the sphere of influence change to happen. Like so. And here is the circularization burn, which takes a while. So we have an orbit. Let's bring it down a bit. 20 kilometers is probably good enough. And yeah, we don't want time warp lower than this. And I know that when you're close to Gilly, you can't time warp at all. So we should try to keep the orbit somewhat high while we are in orbit. So 20 kilometers seems to be good, and yeah, we can just use the RCS here. So we have a stable orbit. We're going to leave the engine up here. So we undock from the engine, and now we are flying under RCS power only, and we are going down to land. Okay, so 20 kilometers is apparently one of the warp limits of Gilly. It's a good thing to have the engine just above that. Actually, I want to land on the day side, so we're just gonna change the orbit here. And it's slightly amazing. You can do even that kind of radical change in your orbit with just a bit of RCS. It's yeah, but the downside is, of course, it takes a lot of time to do the time warp. So we're just gonna sit on the engine and watch. We put up a node, but we can ignore that. You can see the ship. It's going around, and it disappeared. Okay, Gilly Lander crashed into Gilly. So suppose that didn't happen. If that was the case, I would have been more careful with the time warp, and I maybe would have switched over to the ship earlier to see what's going on. And in that case, I would have seen that. Oh, okay, I'm done. Yeah, I reverted the save. I hadn't done a quick save, but I could reuse the quick load, the autosave trick that I talked about earlier. It's very useful. So apparently Gilly in the map view doesn't have the same terrain as Gilly in the game. Something I didn't know, and should count as you know, the game not being as it should be. So I took the liberty of using the little trick. Now we just need to find a place to land. And this area it's a hill, but it looks like it has these I don't know, dunes? No, not dunes, some things that makes it a bit more smooth. So we're just gonna land right over here next to this rock. And are you ready for this? This is a very intense landing. Oh, coming down, 0.2 meters per second, touch. Yeah, no, this is probably or not probably, it's very certainly the easiest body to land on if you have RCS thrusters. So let's get the crew out, let's plant the flag, take the photos, do all the stuff. Gravity is almost negligible, and flying is a lot more convenient than walking in this environment. So get all the three guys up here. No, stay down. Take the postcards, publicity shots, and yeah, as I said, walking not very convenient. Let's plant the flag if you're capable. The Gilly landing site. I never have anything interesting to say. Oh, yeah, jumping is not recommended unless you want to go into orbit. Actually, not really orbit. As you can see, the map view thinks we are above the surface, while we are, I'm quite sure we're on the surface. I think the Kerbals would agree. Yes, so since we are still playing in version 0.21, we can't do any science, so let's just get back up in orbit where we left our engine. Usually when you say that sentence, it's not a good thing, but in this case it's completely planned. So we need to rendezvous with this probe in orbit, and I get a bit confused, but eventually I figure it out, and we have a sort of rendezvous. And when we get close enough, you can just point the ship in some direction and do a burn so that you're in orbit. And then we switch to target retrograde to get the same orbit. Yeah, it's close enough. We're still traveling at very low velocities because Gilly, so nothing of this is hard or expensive. So we're just gonna redock the engine here. Just going in reverse because we're going to dock the engine onto the back. And also we have a linear RCS thrusters on the back, so that's the direction. Forward is the direction we have the most acceleration. So we just dock this here. Nothing complicated at all. So now we're going back to Eve. Planning this return here. A bit of tweaking around because we are on a inclined orbit, which is problematic. And we used more than half of our fuel getting here. So the question is, how much fuel are we going to need to get back? Escaping Gilly is almost trivial. Getting down to low periaps is easy, but not as easy. Circulating orbit around Eve is trivial, as we have the atmosphere to help us, but getting the correct inclination is another matter. That's what we're going to try to solve now, doing a combined periapsis adjustment and inclination correction burn. So this is something like 400 meters per second, and we do not have a lot of fuel left. Let's just see if this works. We will still have the RCS just in case, and we are out of fuel. So we are going to have to use the RCS after all. We don't actually have a lot of RCS, to be honest. So let's just do the aero braking, and let's see where we stand after that. So we have the usual deal: flames, flames, flames. We are decelerating, and it's looking good. Looking a bit too good actually, with our apoapsis being below target orbit apoapsis. So I'm gonna use the RCS to help us along here, accelerate us a little bit. Yeah, we don't have a lot of RCS fuel. It's only the amount left in the big tank, which honestly is more than enough, I hope. Maybe we can correct the inclination a bit. We still need to raise the periapsis anyhow, because it's way too low. It takes so much fuel, so inconveniently much fuel, to do plane changes in Eve orbit because of the high velocity. You want to be going as slow as possible, and I didn't really have that option here. Anyway, we have an encounter with the station. Not a perfect encounter, but it is a pretty close encounter. We are planning some maneuver nodes. If we execute these two nodes, we should have a very good encounter and we should be home. First one is trivial. Second one, which is almost one orbit later, is the plane change, and this is the big node. Are we going to have enough fuel to do this? It's a big, we have quite a, yes, we are going to make it. Let's see, the inclinations, the planes are coming together. It's looking good, and here we are at the actual station. Now we're going to have to kill 120 meters per second relative velocity, and this is using a lot of fuel. So much fuel that we can actually fit all the fuel in the two fuel tanks on the command module. So we're gonna do that and ditch the rest of the craft. We don't need it anymore. We don't have any fuel left. We don't need the space. We certainly don't need the engine. So let's just leave it, and yeah, now we have an encounter on the other side of the planet. Great! Now it's a command module, not a lander anymore. So we're just gonna fly the last distance home just in a command module. This shouldn't be impossible at all. So we just shimmy our way. This thing is maneuverable but not very powerful. And we are basically home. You just need to dock the command module back where we took it. And the crew have completed yet another milestone in the Planetary Space Program. And there we go. Great. Now we can plan our Moho window, which is the next target, which we'll get to next time, maybe. Thanks for watching. Bye!